Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the EFI Optitex Wednesday webinar series. This is a new series of webinars Optitex will be offering every month on, you guessed it, Wednesday, to help educate and inform our attendees on the capabilities of modern tools available to the various industries that produce goods with fabric and flexible materials. I appreciate everyone taking some time out of their day to help kick off this series, and I hope you find the next 45 to 50 minutes well worth your time. So for this webinar, we're going to focus on the importance of strong 2D foundations. I'll be your host for the next 10 minutes. My name is Bill Richards, and I'm going to highlight a few of the points as we work to build a strong 2D foundation. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about Optitex and EFI, how we help our customers design, develop, and produce, and then also the value and importance of a strong 2D. After that, our Optitex expert, Josh Scott, will then take over, and he's going to talk about some of the best practices when it comes to 2D. He's going to demo some of his favorite features within the Optitex software, and then give you some tips on how to improve your overall 2D efficiency. After that, we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes to answer the questions from the audience. So please be sure to ask your questions early and often, as we will work to answer as many of them as possible in the time that we have. So in the series, we do have more webinars to come. So just from a high-level perspective, what we're trying to do here is highlight the tools and technology that are available to the market today. We often find that people and companies settle into a process and really lose sight of the technological shifts and advancements which happen in the market. With our ongoing webinar series, we're hoping to educate existing users, perhaps update some past users, and maybe even add some new users to the Optitex family. So the first webinar in the series, which you're a part of today, is going to be the importance of a strong 2D foundation. And it really all starts with the pattern. I mean, let's face it, this is the blueprint for the development to come. Building a solid foundation with a solid pattern is key to delivering a producible product. Next month, we're going to get into how to onboard to 3D. So 3D is really more than just pretty pictures. So what we're going to focus on in April is to learn how to move from a strong 2D pattern to an accurate 3D asset that fits. The goal here will be highlighting the importance of creating something that is not only visually appealing, but technically sound. And it's going to increase your company's choice, speed of decisions, it's going to help you reduce waste, and it's going to get your product to market faster. And then in May, we're going to unlock the power of 3D. We're going to be getting comfortable with some of the advanced tools of 3D to add value to your entire supply chain, from generating photorealistic images to online collaboration tools in a real 3D space. This and more is all possible with Optitex software. So in this, you'll see the dates for the upcoming events, so please be sure to mark your calendars and get signed up today. I will leave this up for a few seconds if you want to snap a pic or write down the other dates. If you are part of the live presentation, though, which is going on right now, you should already have received the registration details for the upcoming events. We already have a lot of signups for both events and are looking forward to building on the content we're going to be covering today. And don't worry, we will have more events to come after May, so stay tuned for those as well. So to get started, let me give you a little background about Optitex and EFI. So Optitex was founded in 1988 in Israel, purely as a CAD software provider for the fabric and flexible industries. And then in 2016 was purchased by EFI. For those of you unfamiliar, EFI is a manufacturer of inkjet and tile printers, digital printing equipment, and productivity software for labeling, packaging, and the textile industries. EFI is one of the industry's largest manufacturers and is often considered a bellwether for the overall health and stability of the industry. Optitex is fortunate enough to have over 8,000 customers in 87 countries. Truly a global organization, not simply multinational. And support is the best example of this. So when one of our customers will email optitex.support@efi.com, it actually goes into a global queue, so we're not locked geographically. So you can get answers to any questions from a support, features nature, any time of day. And then with our end-to-end portfolio, we have the digital tools to design, develop, and produce in multiple market segments, be it fashion and apparel, bags and accessories, automotive and aerospace, furniture and upholstery, and even display graphics. Within that end-to-end journey, we touch many different departments in a business to help them optimize their process. The focus for this webinar is going to be the 2D tools, which is what is needed to build the foundation of efficient production with a solid pattern base. So we're going to focus on our PDS software, marker, nesting tools, and then we'll touch a little bit on our cut plan and job server functionalities. Here you'll see a list of some of the companies that we're proud to call our customers. Many customers on this list have seen incredible gains with Optitex implementations. Not to single any of them out, but there's everything on this list from a 20% time savings in overall pattern making to a 4% reduction in fabric consumptions over comparable competitive products. One company here even reports a 96% approval on their first fit samples by streamlining their process and taking advantage of the pattern and block capabilities available from Optitex. But Optitex is not simply for the largest companies in the world, though. We maintain a very strong base of small to mid-sized customers as well, so our solution is not just for the big companies in the market, but because of the way it's structured, we can be tailored to meet any size business. Great companies like EB Fashion, the DNA Group, Clothier Design, and Castelli, just to name a few. So who needs 2D? Well, the easy answer is everybody that makes something from fabric or flexible materials. Let's face it, we live and work in an industry that produces the second most amount of waste on the planet, and companies throw away $6 to $8 billion a year in samples alone. These are items that are never sold, never worn, or never put on a store shelf. So this can be anybody from SMBs who without a CAD solution looking to reduce manual work and grow their business effectively. It could be any company looking to reduce their carbon footprint and improve that sustainability. Brands that do heavy pattern making using pleats, notching, walking, darts, etc. Vendors doing heavy pattern making and want to shorten cycles and satisfy their retailers' needs. And those retailers looking for a complete 2D and 3D CAD solution to improve their communication quality with their vendors. And those vendors doing on-demand manufacturing, fast fashion, or printed garments. Really anyone looking to have greater control over their product and improve the fit consistency. So what do the 2D tools from Optitex do? Well, let's start with pattern creation. With PDS for pattern creation, there's the possibility to draft pieces from scratch. You can edit and finalize digital patterns using our powerful editing tools. Those editing tools include a full range of tools that modify and check patterns, make any corrections, grade, and send to markers. With PDS editing tools, it's possible to add various elements such as pleats, darts, seam allowance, notches, buttons as dynamic elements, and much more. We can interface with hardware. Patterns can also be imported into Optitex software from a physical digitizing process from those hard patterns. We also have the ability to import and export patterns, which can also be imported into the Optitex software from other CAD solutions on the market, thanks to the standard formats such as DXF, AMMA, ASTM, or even Adobe Illustrator. And then because we are completely agnostic to hardware, we offer powerful converters and exporters for direct conversion from other CADs to other CAD systems and hardware platforms out there, be it a cutter, a plotter, etc. From a production standpoint, we are a production-orientated tool as well. All the tools in the system take the pattern from start to finish, from design to cut. We have a wide range of grading functions that makes grading simple and adaptable to any workflow. Marker is a production-ready marker tool to save fabric and improve and cut efficiencies in the factory. We even have automated nesting, which offers powerful algorithms to get the most out of your fabric space, helping companies to get the most profit from their product. And then, of course, costing analysis, which is simple an easy-to-use tool which is seamlessly integrated throughout PDS and Marker. This allows users to calculate the product cost during the pattern creation stages, giving you early and accurate costing insights. On this slide, you'll see just a few comments from some of our valuable customers. Things like an easy-to-use system, highlighting the agility, flexibility, intuitiveness of our solution. Great support. You know, sometimes who you buy from is more important than what you buy. The accuracy of our patterns, which is second to none in the industry. The openness of our data architecture, making sure that sharing data and bringing in legacy data is easy as it should be. And then, of course, compatibility with main CAD formats to maintain the value from past work and maintain your company's intellectual property. Now, with that said, I'm happy to welcome our Optitex software expert, Josh Scott, into the presentation, who will take us through some of the best 2D features available today from Optitex.
Thanks, Bill. So I want to thank everybody for joining. Obviously, just say at the outset, we hope everybody's safe and doing well in this troubled time. So as Bill alluded to, what I want to do today is just kind of walk you guys through and do a little bit of a demo, maybe slash training, and hopefully, it's probably going to be a variety of people who are tuning in today, and some will be familiar with the software and some will be seeing it for the first time. So I hope there's going to be something that you guys can all get from it. I really want to just show a few things in terms of process that I think are really valuable, especially when it comes to the pattern work and focusing on the 2D portions of the software. Okay, so for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, this is our Optitex PDS system. So this is our pattern design system. And basically you can see it looks like any other kind of program that you may be familiar with. So we have a main menu at the top, obviously. And then we get into things like all of our separate windows. So we have lots of different windows going on here. This is our piece window you'll see in a moment. That'll show me all of my pieces that I'm working with at any one time. So it's a very nice and visual interaction as I'm doing my pattern making. The other thing that I have open here that I want to show you is our toolbox. I love the toolbox. What it does is it groups all of our most used tools together in a really logical way. So if I'm going to be doing any kind of movement, all my movement tools are there together. Over here, this gray window here with the rulers on the top and the side, this is our working area. And as you'll see in just a few minutes, this is where I'll be doing all of the pattern work on my file today. So, I want to talk right at the outset. I'm gonna open up or import a pattern. So I think it's good to just kind of touch on that as we move forward. So let's talk about sharing patterns in between different systems. This is a huge part of all of our lives, right? So we need to work together. We need to work collaboratively with people all over the world. And one of the best ways that we can do that is by having the capabilities and abilities to share information between different kinds of systems. So Optitex has the ability to import and export standard CAD CAM files. So I'm going to do that now. Let's just look at some of the different kinds of files that we can import and export. So DXF is really kind of the main standard in this industry. So when we talk about DXF, there's a few different kind of flavors or varieties that we're talking about. So there's DXF, AMA, and ASTM. These are all sort of really the same type of file, but AMA and ASTM have a little bit more capabilities that have been built into them as the years have gone on. You'll see in just a moment, I'm going to import an AMA file, and what it will include is things like the grading table that will come along. Now, in addition to that, we do have other possibilities for import and export, including different types of cut files and even Adobe Illustrator files. So let me go ahead and I'm going to browse, and we're going to open up an AMA file. Now, because it is graded, I'm automatically prompted to open up my rule table. You don't have to do this, but might as well since I'm doing that. And you'll see it pops open with my grading all intact. I'm just going to very quickly use one of my shortcuts to hide that grading for just a second. Now, excuse me. Now, in the next couple minutes, I'm going to walk you guys through how we import, what we do with once we've imported a pattern like this. But I do want to just kind of focus in for just a second, because again, part of the idea of this webinar is to talk to you about ideas and things that you should be aware of as you plan and do your business. So I just wanted to touch for a second on the topic of blocks. So, for anybody who doesn't know this, although I'm sure this crowd does, if you think about what blocks are used for, a block is basically a pattern that you know well, and you've gone through all the fit approval process for, and is going to be the template, that building block, that first starting spot for other new styles to come. Now, you can't use it for every kind of different pattern that you're going to make, but really you can use it for a lot of the different types of foundational garments. And why is this important? Well, ever increasingly, I think it's more important, especially as we go to more and more things like buying online. So, your customers, they need to know that that thing that they're going to buy from you fits the same way as that last thing they bought from you. And that's really where the power of blocks come in. The other thing that's very helpful about them is that it gives people a starting place to create the new pattern from. So they're really not having to take all those initial first steps in creating a pattern. Just one little anecdote that I want to kind of talk about there is an article I saw. This is a couple years ago now, but it was something about how Old Navy was selling something like 30,000 pairs of a particular jean every day. And, obviously those numbers are pretty extraordinary, and it's only because of a fit consistency that they're able to get, that they're able to do that. And just talking about also having a pattern design system, whether it's a block or a style specific, you also really think about this. You have a digital archive of everything that you've done moving forward. And that's a really powerful tool to also kind of take in your mind and consider. So this is something that you will have. You can always turn back to it. If it's a great selling style like that jean is for Old Navy, you can always come back to it. And if you want to make maybe some sort of style-specific changes from season to season, you can always do that. But you've got that asset. It's easy to find. It's in your archive. You've got it backed up. Okay, back to doing some pattern work. So I've got my DXF. It's imported in. Now, one of the other things that we're going to do is we're going to clean this. So that's usually what we have to do once we've imported a pattern, because we want to make it into what we kind of call a smart pattern. So you have things like our darts are here, but they're not actually darts. They're really just lines. And same thing with our seam allowance here. So one of the great things about Optitex and the toolbox that we've created is we have in the import section of the toolbox, we also have the next one, which is convert internals to seam. So this is a tool that we have where you just basically click on the internal line, and you can see that it turns into a dotted line, which is the Optitex seam allowance. And I'm just going to do that for each of these pieces. So you see that, boom, boom, boom. I get a little message over there. And then once I'm done with that, I can go to the next tool, which is switch my pieces from the cut line to the sew line. And I'm going to do that for all of my pieces. Now, you definitely want to make sure that you're working on your sew line. So I hope that's clear to everybody who's on the call, because that's really the way that you need to be working on your pattern. Okay, so I'm going to do a few more things now to clean this up. So I'm going to go into the next section of my um, toolbox here, which is my half symmetry. And I'm going to go ahead and do what's called set half. And that means I'm just going to say, okay, mirror this side from this side to that side. And I'm going to do that for both my front and my back. Okay. If I'm moving too quickly for you guys, you can always go back and watch the recording of this webinar. Okay, so oftentimes, and you guys have probably seen this before if you have any kind of experience with a CAD system, but oftentimes when you're especially importing and exporting files, you'll notice that you get a lot of extra points. You can see I'm zooming in really kind of close there. And basically, what you do with that's just a kind of artifact of the import and export process that happens with all sorts of different types of software. So one thing that I like to do is I like to go in and make sure that this file, once I've imported it, is nice and clean so I can begin to do my pattern work in Optitex. So there's a couple steps that I want to take and show you, and these are the things I really like to do. So first of all, I'm going to go into my piece menu, and I'm going to go to the points cleanup function. If you guys have not used this, it's a great way to eliminate a lot of the extra points. Now you can pick your tolerances for these things. I'm just going to go ahead and use the defaults, which is a 50th of an inch, and I'm going to say for all of my pieces, okay, and I'm just going to hit OK. Now watch, I want you to watch along here. Let's see if some of those get eliminated. Yep, there we go. So you can see that some of those points have been eliminated. Okay, the other thing that we can see here, by the way, is that we've got some points that may not be correctly attributed. So see, this is not a curved point. So I can go ahead and double click on that guy, and I can make it into a curved point. Now, another great thing is if you have a regular keyboard that has a 10 key pad on the right hand side, this is another great tip that I love, which is that, so we can always change these curved, non-curved points in the dialog here. So I double click on the point. Let's go here again. And you can always change it here, curved, non-curved. But you can also do that within that 10 key keyboard, like I was mentioning before. Okay, so we can always say, if you hit the number 2, it'll change it from a curved to a non-curved point. So I'm just going to show you that again. So again, 2 curved, non-curved, and then 1 will change it from a grade point to a non-graded point. So that's a nice quick tip when you guys are working. The other thing that we can do as part of this is we can very easily just change the shapes of things by eliminating points. So one of the things that I'll often tell people is that, when you get this pattern in, you maybe want to change it from curved to non-curved or eliminate some of the points. But oftentimes, one of the best things to do to kind of work on the shape is just to go in and actually just delete some points out, right? So like just delete some points that you don't need. And you'll see what happens is that shape just becomes cleaner and cleaner, okay? And it's not a big difference to the pattern. So that's, again, it's another thing that we'll do, and I think it's a great tip. Okay, so we've got our seam allowances all kind of in there and ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and just hide those. So if you notice here in the bottom section of PDS, you have these quick on and off toggles. So for example, I can toggle on and off my seam allowance. So while I'm working, I'm not interested in seeing it that much. Now, what I'm going to do also is just bring in a different, I'm going to bring in the same file that's also had the darts and everything created for it. So let's just do that now. Okay, so this is a fully cleaned pattern. You can see we've actually put in the dart tools as well. we've used the Dart tool to create smart darts within the pattern design system. Okay, so what are some of the next things that we're going to do as part of this correction or checking process? So I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys some of the measurement functions. So let's go ahead and I'm going to measure the neckline here. So I'm using my shortcuts. That's another great tip that I'll show you, or I'd like to talk about, which is using shortcuts as much as you possibly can. I know for some it's like a little bit difficult at the beginning to get used to, but in terms of being able to quickly move from task to task within the software, it's a great thing to start using the shortcuts and hotkeys. And I couldn't recommend it more. So I'm just going to measure from center front to the high point shoulder here. Now let's take a look at what we've got. Now this is a lot of numbers that are listed here in this window, but you know what's great about it is that it shows us everything that we're going to want to measure as part of this process. So let's take a look at this, which is our base size, right? That's the highlighted size. So we have length, X, Y, distance, and angle. So I just want to kind of walk through those really quickly here. What is the length? The length is actually the perimeter or the curved measurement from the center front to the high point shoulder. So it's along that measurement, which is 4.5 basically. So that's one thing that you might want to measure as part of this process. But what are some of the other things you would want to measure as part of this process? Well, you may want to know what the neck width is. Well, that's here with the X, right? So 2.6 is that distance here, right? So that going from center front to over here. Or the neck drop, and that's what you have for Y. So from here, this area down to the center front is 3 inches. So again, it's nice because you can do one measurement and it shows you everything you need to with one, and it shows you with all of your sizes too. Again, a lot of numbers to look at, but once you understand how the tool works, it's really great to be able to measure and do everything that you need to do. Okay. Now, let's talk about some other things that I love in here. So I want to talk about walking. So I'm going to walk my pattern here on the side seam. So I'm going to engage the walk tool, okay, and go from here to here. Now you notice that you just choose your starting walking spot and your ending walking spot, and it's going to line those two up. And then I'm just zooming in and out with my mouse wheel, and then I can just continue to walk by clicking along the contour. It's that simple. So it's very, very intuitive for the user. It will do things like skip the dart, so it's going to go from this point all the way over to that point, and then I just continue walking along the path. Okay. Now, if you get to a section like this and you see that there's a difference, we can do a few different things. I can measure that distance, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just correct it. So I don't need to exit my tool or anything like that. I can just simply go ahead and use the shortcut for the tool that I want, which is going to be to grab those 2 points and have them match up to that point. Okay. If there's other changes that you want to make, like so for example, that looks a little bit wonky to me, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that point like we talked about before. I'm just going to delete it. See? And that maybe, although not perfect, is a lot better than what we had before. And then I'm just going to continue walking. So I'm going to go ahead and continue walking back up here. I'm going to look at my underarm seam. Again, maybe not the best. I don't love the way that it's looking, but that's okay for now. I want to show you guys another really cool function, which is something that we have called graded walking. Okay, that is here in our walking options. So I'm going to apply that. And what that does, you'll notice, right, it just clicked in. And I'm also going to change my view so you can see each size by its color. Again, you'll notice I can move back and forth between these functions really quickly. It's a nice thing to be able to have. I like solid colors when I'm just doing my pattern making work, but when I'm doing my grading work, I really like to have each individual pattern size colored in a unique color. Okay, so grading walking, what does it do? Well, it stacks as I walk all of the sizes so that I can see what my um, contour looks like for each size. Now this is great. That means I don't need to walk and switch between different sizes as I'm working, and it's a really nice function to be able to save time. And again, it's about efficiency and time saving as we do this work. Okay, when I'm finished walking, I can just go back to my select tool and it will go ahead and my pieces back where they started. Now, in terms of checking patterns, there's another thing that I really love, which is, beyond the measurement tool, if we need to check more than one measurement, or if there's a combination of measurements that we need to check, we can do that using the compare length. Okay. Now, what does compare length do? Again, its ability to take one set of measurements and compare it to another. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare my sleeve cap to my armhole. Okay, so I'm going to open up the compare length window, and it is a window, so it's under the view menu. It's here, compare length. Okay, so I'll just expand that window a little bit. Again, we have flexibility within our workspace. So if you want to pick this up, move it somewhere else, dock it somewhere else, you can do that. I like it here at the bottom, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to take the total armhole. So I select the armhole, and we add those together just by selecting it and adding them. Okay, and then I'm going to subtract the sleeve cap. Okay, so when I look at this, I can see the total from my armhole is 18.6. The total from my sleeve cap is 18.6, and I can see the difference between the two here, which is obviously 0. So there is no ease in this particular pattern. So again, pattern making, everybody's going to do it differently, but there's probably should be a little bit of ease in here. So let's go ahead and just show what that would look like. So if I'm going to go ahead again and modify this pattern, and let's say I just add a little bit extra here to the sleeve cap. Now again, maybe I'm not doing this exactly how I would. Say I'm going to not move it at all up and down, but just going to move it a 1/4 of an inch up. Great. So I've done my adjustment, and then I can go in here and I can say that I want it to update. Sorry. Update. There we go. And now I can see that there's the ease is in my sleeve cap, and my armhole is the same as it was before. So again, compare length is great when you want to not just take one measurement, but when you want to take one set of measurements and compare it to another. So you can see here I have just 2, but you could add as many as you wanted. And the same is true for the sleeve cap. So I have just one measurement, but I could do as many as I wanted. Okay, I'm going to just close that out real quick. Okay, so I was modifying the sleeve cap. Let's talk a little bit about some of the modification tools that we have within the system. There's a couple that I want to show just kind of off the bat that I just happen to love. So again, if I kind of focus in on the toolbox, each of these tools is going to be, or each of the movement tools is going to be in here and in the movement section. But one of the ones I love is our move proportional tool. And what this tool does is basically allows me to take a series of points and move them together and true up the line as I'm doing it. Okay. So again, I'm going to kind of move in. I'm going to zoom into this pattern. So this pattern, I want to actually extend the shoulder width here. And how am I going to do that? So I'm going to select a series of these points and then extend out the shoulder from here. So I'm going to go ahead and use that move proportional tool. Select, let's say from here to here. and then we can extend this out. So you'll see I get a preview of the direction that I'm going, and you can just, by the way, you can do this visually. Okay, boom. Now that's probably not going to be, the best fitting shoulder. So I'm just going to quickly hit Control Z to undo. Again, lots of great shortcuts to know. Control Z is certainly one of the best, especially as we all begin to work with any kind of new system. So I'm going to select that again, and I'm just going to follow out the shoulder slope line. Okay, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to call up my dialog box, right? So I can do this at any time for any of the kinds of adjustments that I want to make. And then I can key in exactly the kind of change that I want to make. So I want to actually make this to be 3/4 of an inch. So I type that in, and boom, I've got my change done there. And I'm going to do the same thing here on the back. So I'm going to select that line, grab it, and follow that shoulder contour and make the change to 3/4 of an inch. Okay, the other thing that I want to do, just again in terms of pattern manipulation, is I want to lengthen both the front and the back. We have a great tool for that. It's called multi-move, one of my favorites in the system. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag a box, okay, around all of the sections that I want to move down. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to also call up my dialog box, and I'm going to say -1 inch, okay, and boom, that adjustment is done, and I am ready to kind of move on. There's a lot of other things that we can do in here too in terms of the tools. Many more than I can show you guys here today. So I just wanted to show one kind of last thing that I like, which is the arc tool. It's in the contour section. Okay, arc is great because it can create a nice shape, but it can also clean up points as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go from here to my high point shoulder. So you'll notice as I kind of pull it out, it's, as a default, it does just a basic circle. But if you hold Shift, as you can see down in the status bar, you can shift it one way or another. So this is a really nice way for me to kind of pull out, draw down, and see kind of the shape that I want. Let's say, okay, there. You can choose how many points you want, and then you can go ahead and change it there. From there, you can always, if you don't like that shape, 100%, again, as I've mentioned several times before in today's demo, you can always go back in, you can clean up some of those points and get a better shape for something that you want. Okay, so let's talk about taking this pattern to the next steps, right? So, we've talked about several things in terms of the importance of having a pattern making system. But, one of those things is going to be seam allowance. So this pattern has no seam allowance on it at the moment, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just very quickly how we can add seam allowance to this. So normally what I'll do is I'll do a basic seam. I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch. Okay, for all of my seams. Let's turn those on so you can see them. Perfect. And then you can come in and you can define each individual seam as needed. So let's say I want to add a little bit more to this section here. I can select the end of this sleeve, and I can do 1 inch. One of the things I love actually is that we have a lot of different special seam types, and that you can experiment with how you want them, and just apply them until you get the one you want. So I'm going to do, I think, this turn back. Yep, perfect. So these are the turn backs that I want, and now that I like them, I'm going to go ahead and just say close. So again, we have all the different types of seams, turn backs, and special corners that you would want as part of that process. I'm going to hide those seam allowances again. Another thing that's obviously important for production would be things like notches. So one of the tools, again, that I really love that I just wanted to show you guys, which is under the points and notches section, is our grade notch tool. What does this do? Well, it allows me to select a notch and then select a reference point and then say what I want the distance to be for any particular size or for all sizes. So I'm going to actually just do it for all sizes, where I'm going to say I want it to be minus, because we're going back up this way, minus, say, 4.5, right? Minus 4.5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and enter that and equal it for every size, and I'm going to apply that. So basically, now you see not a big jump for this guy, right? For that size, very close. But you see it came off of its point because now this is its reference point. And it does that for all of the sizes at the same time. It's a great tool. I encourage you guys to look into it and see about using it. Okay, the other thing that we need to do is, obviously once you've gotten the kind of the base pattern ready to go, one of the things that we want to do is create some of the extra pieces that come out of it. So I just wanted to show you how easy that can be. So I'm going to use my parallel tool very quickly to kind of choose a section. So I'm going to do, this as a sleeve, so obviously you wouldn't do a facing for this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So I'm going to create a facing that is 1.5 inches wide. So I'm creating that parallel line here, and then all I do is very simply use my build piece tool. Again, it's in your build and cut section here to fill that area in. That is a little bit strange. Let's try that again. Very strange indeed. I don't know why that is. Let's try it for the neckline. So I'm going to create another parallel for the neckline. We'll still do that same 1.5 inches. There we go. That's more like what it's supposed to be like. So we fill that area in, we click again, and it creates that facing piece automatically. So again, it's a nice way to take that initial style and build all of the pieces that you need out of it. Okay, so that's kind of it for the pattern making side. I did want to just kind of throw a couple little things on there, which is to say, once we're done with inside the PDS system, that import option that we had, we have the same thing kind of backwards, which is the export. So again, you can export as AMA, DXF, Adobe Illustrator, what have you. So there's a lot of different options if you need to send this to a vendor or someone else that you're collaborating with around the globe. We can also send this to a number of different hardware options. So what I mean by that is if we actually need to plot it out and cut it, we can send it to any kind of number of plotters. We're fully compatible with basically anything that's out there. Now, you guys have seen that we do have a full range of grading here, right? So I have a full size set. I'm not going to get into each individual kind of showing you on the grading, but just know that we have the full set of tools. I'll open up that menu here just so you guys can kind of see it. Here's our grading table. So you have a full set of grading tools to be able to kind of quickly grade it in kind of any way that you guys would want. I want to pop over here because, again, if we look at why 2D is so important to the whole game of things, we talked a little bit about blocks and how having a digital archive is so key to fit. The next thing I want to talk about is in this whole process, right? We've created the pattern. The next thing we're going to do from there is create the marker. So I'm going to go over here to our marker making. Okay. Just very, very quickly, I want to show you how we can create a marker. So what we do is we say a new marker. Okay, you choose your width. I'm going to do 54 by 200. Doesn't really matter. And the great thing about this is that we can use it not just for creating production markers, right? So this is something that people have done quite a few times, but or people do all the time when they're actually doing. Oh, I need to not have it open PDS. Come back here. So this is these are things that people don't just use for actual production, right? People use this for costing. So a lot of our customers from our offices in the U.S., they don't do their own production. They're working with partners overseas, maybe might do that for them. But one of the great things here is that you can actually go in, put in a size set. I'm just doing one of each size. And you can begin to place these pieces down here. You can choose how they're, or what sort of restrictions you have on them. So is it a one-way or a two-way kind of situation? What pieces that we're using from here. And then you can also use our automated nesting. So I'm going to go ahead and actually let that run for just a second and just talk about why you would do this. So again, if you are a factory and you need to actually cut this out and sew it up, clearly using a marker system to utilize the most of your materials is going to be something that you'd want to do. But even if you're not doing that, it still makes sense to be able to do something like this because you want to use the costing capabilities of the software and the utilization to know and plan out much better than you may normally do what exactly the usage of this is going to be. I'm just going to go ahead and stop this. Now, usually we'll let it go for a few minutes to try and get the best. The algorithm's going to kind of keep going and going until we until it either reaches 100%, which is not going to be possible in this case because we're not doing squares. But and then you can take that yield information down here from the bottom to start doing your cost calculations and to know and plan kind of what you think you're going to be able to get out of this pattern and out of this marker. In addition to that, we also have costing tools. So if you go in here, you can go to our calculations section and you can hit on cost calculations. So in this, it knows exactly for like which sizes and for what order this is done. So you can put in things like your material cost per yard. So let's say it's $5. You can put in a cutting cost. So let's say it's, this is saying $2.54 an inch. I don't think that's probably right. So maybe we want to have that be 0. And again, it'll calculate all of these things and tell you what the cost is for the whole order, what the cost is per item. And these are really, really helpful tools to be able to kind of use. Now, I am running out of time. Sorry, I'm so long-winded. I did want to just kind of talk about a couple other really quick things before we turn this over to a Q&A. And that is just talking about how we're here to support you guys. I mentioned at the kind of top of the discussion here, we know everybody's kind of in these trying times. A lot of people are working remotely. We are here to help. And some of the ways that we can do that, we offer full training and consulting. We can do that completely remotely. And the other thing that we offer that I just wanted to kind of mention is our e-learning service. If you guys have not seen it, basically this is an online learning platform. It is not like a help website. It is much more like a class curriculum. So people are doing remote learning all the time now. You have things like lynda.com and all sorts of other options in terms of learning remotely. So this is our way of doing it. And basically, if I just click in here, we have lots of different classes that you can take. So, and these are sort of bundled together. So here today, great thing if you wanted to follow up from today's webinar would be our 2D e-learning and our grading e-learning. So these are kind of two sets of coursework that you can take, and then we follow on to our 3D section. If you have any questions about this or you're curious, we would be more than happy to kind of go over that with you. With that said, I think I'm going to go ahead and kind of leave it up for a Q&A at this point.
No, that's a great segue, Josh, and I appreciate that, especially since two of our questions that have come in through the chat. One of them was the training and educational offerings from Optitex, which e-learning is a great one that Josh has pointed out here, and he did speak a little bit to the to the custom and one-on-one capabilities. And then one of the other questions that came in is how are we going to be able to get a recording of this webinar? So we're going to do two things. One is we're going to, all the attendees that have attended are going to be emailed a copy, just to follow up and so forth. And then we'll put a link to it, but we're also going to post it on our e-learning site. So you'll be able to get firsthand experience of how the e-learning works and be able to watch the webinar. So you kind of answered two of the questions we got without even knowing we got them. Way to go.
I'm a very intuitive fellow. Just one quick other thing too. So the way that the e-learning works, by the way, is you can see here I'm logged in as myself, and so all the prices are crossed out. That means I'm a subscriber. So again, there is a cost for some of this, but if you look on our main page, by the way, and to kind of Bill's point, we also have. Now, this does require you to log in and create an account, but at no charge, you can go and see any of the webinars that we've delivered in the past. So this webinar will also come onto the webinar link that you guys will be able to have access to. So again, it's totally free. There's no cost to it, but you do just need to sign up for an account in order to view it.
So if you're ready, I do have a couple more questions for you. You being the Optitex expert, I'll ask these and see how you do. We'll grade you at the end. Is there any way to mass change points from grade to curve?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. So let's come back here. I'm going to open up that pattern again. By the way, again, little things, but these are tips that I would really encourage everybody to do, which is, and this is not even unique to Optitex, by the way, but it's lots of different systems that have this. Rather than go and click and find and double click on that pattern, I know that I had it open, so I'm just going to go here to File and go to my recent files, and it shows all the things that I've been working on. Super easy. Again, not even necessarily an Optitex tip, but it's a pro tip nonetheless. So there's a couple things that we can do. So within the system, you can select multiple points by clicking and holding and then dropping. So you see how it's selected all of those points. So if I hit enter, that brings up my points modifications here. So I can make them all non-curved points like that. Obviously, I wouldn't want that for this section. So that's one way that you can select multiple points and make the changes. I would also encourage you guys, if you're not used to it, to go into the piece menu, general, and change internal attributes. Okay, so this is not points per se, but it's a great way to be able to change multiple internal things. So let's say you have a pattern like mine that has all T notches. I want them all, let's say, to become V notches. You can set the size, you can set the angle, okay? And then boom, it's a way to make mass changes all at once. It's another great tip. Bill, what else you got?
Oh, that is a great tip. Thank you. Can I use marker making for just costing instead of production? I think you kind of touched on that at the end. I think that question might have come in as you were just starting to talk about it.
Yeah, so I can tell you, and I sort of mentioned it when discussing it. So obviously, you know, my role is to work with companies of all shapes and sizes within North America and South America, but mostly North America. Obviously, we don't do a ton of production here, and so a lot of the people that I work with who are using marker making are doing it exactly for that reason. They are not going to be producing this, but they want to know what is possible, what sort of efficiencies, what kind of fabric yield and consumption can they get or is possible. And that's a way for them to work with their vendor partners overseas or maybe in Latin America to kind of come together and see, you know, hey, we know based on our own calculations what the yield and consumption is. And it's just a nice way to know kind of what you're planning for and have a little bit more control over your process. And the same is true, by the way, with having a digital pattern making system to both archive, but also to check people's work. So a lot of, you know, I didn't mention it kind of at the top, but it's the same is true for the marker as it is with the pattern. So a lot of people, you know, we work collaboratively these days. So you may be sending out a block pattern. Someone does some pattern work. They send it back to you. You check it. It's all part of this process, and being able to have a tool that can help you robustly do that thing is really important. We don't want to just put everything on someone else's plate, right? You don't want to just say, hey, vendor or supplier who you have a great relationship with and maybe you've been working with for a really long time. It's not just about them, it's about you guys working together. And having a pattern system is really the only way that you can do that. It's the ability to check that work because, at the core of it, especially if you're doing, we've really been focused today on garment production, but the pattern is everything. That's the fit. That's the everything. So if that's not right, then sort of everything else in the process, whether it be the what print you're putting on it or how well it's displayed in the store, all of that's going to end up being secondary if it doesn't fit well. So.
Oh, good point. And we've got about 6 more questions, but probably only time for 1 or 2 more.
Right.
And we'll definitely follow up with these after the fact. But Josh, you showed walking. How did you get into that function? I didn't see you click on anything on the screen to do that.
Yeah, that's because I am a big proponent of shortcuts. But the easy way is go into movement, and it's under here, walk. When you see on the right-hand side, there's in parentheses is the shortcut for all the tools. Walk is a great one. It's one of the what I call dumb shortcuts, right? It's W for walk.
And there's a lot of other functions that can be done that way, as you see there. Yep.
Almost everything has a shortcut, and if it doesn't, you can actually create your own custom shortcuts.
Perfect. This is a great question that came in. Can you talk a little bit about writing all necessary information on each pattern? For example, style, number, name, how many pieces to cut, etc.
Yes.
And then as a follow-up to that, is there any way to customize that information to create a template?
So there is sort of a template to begin with. So I'm going to just double click on our piece. That's the other thing too. I hope everybody kind of sees, especially as I move through it. Now I'm an expert. I've been working in the system for 10 plus years, but it's very simple. Excuse me. It's very simple to use, very intuitive. So when I want the piece information, I just double click on the piece. So here you see you have all of that information. I wouldn't call it a template, but it's basically it's something intuitive to each of the pieces. So here you can see things like quantity, whether it's paired. So I need a right and a left. And then we have different sections here. So you have code, material, quality, description. These are really up to each individual user to use however they want within the system. So code could be some kind of special number that your company uses. I mean, material is usually pretty straightforward. That will be things like self, lining, combo, however, etc. And then you have a description. So if you type stuff in here, it'll show up on your pattern piece, and this is consistent from piece to piece. If you need additional text or information, we also have a text tool that you can put text in a specific location on the pattern piece.
And then that kind of talks to the template piece, so that was great. I think we got time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
Sure.
Do you have any best practices for importing a DXF file?
Yes, I do. One piece of advice that I will give is that you should always choose AMA or ASTM to begin with. One of the things is that because the file will usually have the file extension of DXF. Sometimes people will choose DXF. This usually causes problems. Let's see if I can actually recreate this. If it's not saved specifically in that format, there we go. This is perfect. You'll end up usually with a lot of weird artifacts. So here you can see I have extra drill holes and things that I wouldn't have if I did it as an AMA. So that's my one piece of advice is always just choose AMA as your import of choice to begin with, and then kind of take it from there.
Great, good advice. And then last one I think we'll have time for is, can I grade from my marker program if I don't have PDS?
I think the answer to that is no. I've never thought about that actually ever before. So with grading, so you can't grade within the marker program. What the marker program gives you the ability to do is actually take a pattern that has multiple graded sizes and place the ones that you need. So within the marker, we have some ability to do kind of what we would call pattern making work, so maybe like adding a notch or something like that. But really, it's mostly designed to take a finished product and then create a marker from it. So grading would really not be something that you'd be able to do from the marker.
Okay, great. So we're running a little bit over, but that's because we did get some great questions, and we certainly appreciate that from the audience. Don't forget, we're going to have another webinar coming up on April 29th, where we're going to take the next step in this series. So we're going to talk about moving from the 2D pattern that we created here and starting to get into the 3D piece of it. We will be sending a follow-up to this event and also be posting to our e-learning and also sending a link out of the recording. So I want to thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for the great questions. Stay safe, stay home, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.